All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling one of Canada's biggest immigration pathways, the Canadian Experience Class, or CEC for short. If you're working in Canada right now and have your eyes on that permanent resident card, you're going to want to stick around for this.
So let me ask you something. You've landed a sweet job in Canada, you've got your work permit, you're pretty much a shoo-in for permanent residence, right? Well, that's what a lot of people think. But, and this is a big but, things have completely changed.
And this is the number that just blows that old way of thinking out of the water. Zero. Yep, zero. Since March 2025, having a Canadian job offer, even a really good one with all the right paperwork, is worth exactly 0 points in the comprehensive ranking system. This one change, you guys, has completely flipped the script on how you get invited to apply. So that brings us to what the Canadian Experience Class looks like now. And here's the bottom line. It is no longer about just having a job. The whole game has shifted. Now it's all about what you've actually done in that job. And you can see that shift so clearly here. You know, back in the day, before 2025, people really banked on getting those 50, sometimes even 200 bonus points from a job offer. But the new way? Forget about it. Your success now is pretty much all on you. It's about how strong your own skilled work history is, and crucially, how good your language skills are.
Okay, so before we even start talking about points and scores, we have to cover the basics. Are you even eligible? Think of these as the non-negotiable pass-fail requirements. You have to meet these just to get your foot in the door of the express entry pool.
And really, it all boils down to these 3 core pillars. First, you've got to have at least 1 full year of skilled work experience in Canada, and that has to be from the last 3 years. Second, you have to hit that minimum language score for your specific job. And third, and you cannot mess this one up, all that work had to be done while you had legal status in Canada. No exceptions.
Now, I just said skilled work experience. So what does that actually mean? Well, it all comes down to something called the tier level. Basically, it's just the government's fancy system for classifying jobs. It's not about your job title, it's about the real duties and responsibilities you had.
So for the CEC, your experience has to be in what's called Tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. This covers a whole range of jobs, from management and professional roles all the way to technical jobs and skilled trades. Now, what's not on the list is really important. Experience in Tier 4 or 5, think jobs like food counter attendants or cleaners. Sadly, that doesn't qualify for this program.
And that tier level we just talked about, it directly connects to the language score you need. If your job is in Tier 0 or 1, so management or professional fields, you need to hit at least a Canadian language benchmark score of 7. For the technical and skilled trade jobs in Tier 2 or 3, the bar is a little lower at a minimum of CLB 5.
All right, so just meeting those minimums gets you into the pool. But let's be real, that doesn't guarantee you'll get an invitation. So now, let's switch gears and talk strategy. How do you actually build a profile that's strong enough to get picked?
Okay, listen up, because this is huge. With those job offer points totally gone, your language score is no longer just a checkbox. It's become one of the most powerful tools you have to crank up your CRS score. Seriously, a few extra points on your language tests can literally be the difference between getting an invitation and not. And here's another thing. The CEC technically has no minimum education requirement, but this is a classic trap that a lot of people fall into. If you want to be competitive, getting an educational credential assessment, or an ECA, for your degrees from back home is pretty much non-negotiable. You just can't afford to leave those education points on the table.
Okay, let's quickly talk about the practical stuff, costs and timelines. You're looking at about $1,525 per person for the fees. But, and this is a massive advantage for the CEC, you are exempt from showing settlement funds. You don't need proof of funds. And on top of that, the processing time is one of the fastest out there, usually just 4 to 6 months after you submit that final application.
So what does this whole journey actually look like from start to finish? Let's break it down into 5 simple steps.
First things first, you gotta confirm your job has the right tier code. Step 2, you need to go and absolutely ace your language test. Once you have those scores, you build your online express entry profile. Then you're officially in the pool, and it's a waiting game for that golden ticket, the invitation to apply. Once you get it, the clock starts. You have 60 days to get your final, super detailed application in.
Okay, this last part is so important. The CEC might seem pretty straightforward, right? But there are some really common mistakes people make about what work experience actually counts. And these mistakes can lead to a flat-out refusal. So let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. I hear this one all the time. Someone says, but I worked 40 hours a week all summer while I was in university. It feels like it should count. I mean, it's Canadian experience, right?
But the rule on this is absolute, and there's no wiggle room. Any work experience you get while you're a full-time student, it doesn't matter if it's on campus, off campus, a co-op, whatever, it does not count toward that 1-year minimum for the CEC. Your 1-year clock only starts ticking after you've graduated and you're on a proper post-grad work permit.
And here's another one that trips people up, especially now with the gig economy. You know, I'm a freelancer, on a work permit, I'm self-employed. That has to count, right?
And again, the answer is a hard no. Self-employment experience inside Canada is specifically not allowed for the CEC program. What the government is looking for is that classic employer-employee relationship, and you prove that with things like official pay stubs and your T4 tax slips.
So just to wrap this up and be crystal clear, let's run through what does not count. Work you did as a full-time student? Out. Any self-employment or freelance work? That's out. Work you did without a valid permit or authorization? Definitely out. And finally, any experience you got while you were a refugee claimant is also not eligible for the CEC.
Which really brings us to the final crucial question. You've put in the hard work, you've earned your Canadian experience, but in this new world without job offer points, is your profile actually strong enough to prove it? That's the real challenge.